everyone, I'm Bandish, the founder of The Curious Mindset, a private community for technology leadership teams powered by 64 Tech, an IT solutions provider of hardware, cloud, and IT services. Although we're powered by 64 Tech, our core principle is to always give more than we take. Rest assured, you won't be bombarded with any sales pitches. Please do follow our dedicated LinkedIn page to stay updated on how 64 Tech can assist you with any technology challenges, or if you're looking to shake things up with your current IT suppliers. While 64 Tech provides technology solutions, some of the biggest challenges technology leaders face are human, not technical. As leaders, there's often pressure to appear all-knowing, which makes it hard to admit what we don't know or ask questions that allow us all to be vulnerable. That's why the Curious Mindset was created, to help us build the essential people and leadership skills we didn't know we needed, and to tackle three of the biggest challenges faced by technology leaders. Firstly, individual impact, empowering leaders with insights and strategies to drive personal and professional growth, especially for those without traditional support. Secondly, team impact, strengthening leadership as the foundation of high-performing teams, improving collaboration and results. And thirdly, leadership support. Leadership can be isolating. We connect technology leaders to foster relationships that drive collaboration and excellence. This community grew out of my own experience and my desire to help others overcome the struggles I faced when I became a leader. I know how challenging that journey can be, and our North Star remains simple: no one leads alone. At 64 Tech, the mantra is together we grow, and the Curious Mindset is how we can make that happen. This is a space for us to learn, to share, and grow more confident as technology leaders. Our mission: to help technology leaders become the best versions of themselves. Before I introduce today's speakers, I just wanted to quickly say many of our members and followers aren't seeing the content that we share. So could I ask you a small favor? If you like what we're doing, the easiest way to support us is to head over to our LinkedIn page, hit the bell icon on the top right, and select all so you never miss a post. If you believe in what we're building with the Curious Mindset and you enjoy these sessions that we run every fortnight, please consider leaving us a quick Google review. It takes less than a minute but makes a real difference. And if our team reaches out asking for a short LinkedIn recommendation, we'd massively appreciate that too. Lastly, if you're connected to other technology leaders who you think would benefit from being part of this community, please invite them by sharing our website, and there's a simple form on there that they can fill out to join. In return, my commitment to you is this: I'll do everything in my power, along with my team, to keep making this better for you. Fortnight after fortnight, we'll listen to your feedback, we'll bring in the guests you want to hear from, and we'll keep what we're doing to help tech leaders grow together. Thank you so much. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our host, Andy McMenemy, our technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell, and our returning special guest, David Mead.
Vanish, thank you so much. And it goes without saying, we say it every fortnight, but if it wasn't for the benevolence of yourself and 64 Tech, the Curious Mindset wouldn't exist. Not only have you helped the community to survive the last 5 years, but in 2025, they're going to thrive. And I'm so excited about the lineup of speakers that we've got and the interactions that we're getting, not only in the chat during the sessions, but also from comments on Slack and comments on LinkedIn and personal interactions that I've had with some of the tech leaders that are in the room today. So it's absolutely a privilege, and we don't take it lightly, Bandish. So thank you so much for your continued support. And I hope that there's business flowing both ways and you're likewise being supported. It's my very great pleasure today to introduce returning speaker, very much loved and very much respected, David Mead. And David is going to talk us today through going beyond theory and going into the real challenges that we either may have faced already or will certainly face in the coming period. But it's not only how we face it, it's how we navigate it and how we do that in a way that builds trust, builds connectivity, and builds psychological safety, the all-important keywords in building high-performing relationships. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce you to David. David, welcome to the Curious Mindset.
Thank you so much, Andy. And man, I love everything that this community stands for. And it is an absolute honored to be asked back again. I think this is my fourth opportunity to speak with this group. It's lovely to see some familiar faces. And for all those of you who I don't know yet or I haven't seen, so glad to have you here. Um, as Andy mentioned, today is going beyond the theoretical. I want to give you just a little bit of context before we dive into the content for the day. But let me start here. The greatest leadership principles are not some mysterious secret, right? They are common sense. Um, I call them uncommon sense, however, because as common sense as they are, in a leadership context, they are not all that common. Um, we know what great leadership looks like. And yet, finding these incredible leaders is more the exception than the rule. And I ask myself, well, why is that? If we know what makes great leadership, why is it that we don't see more of it in our organizations? And the reason is that common sense does not equate to common practice. As I ask myself, why aren't more leaders doing the simple things that they know will build strong cultures, build more collaboration, increase innovation, and create a better experience for them and for the teams that they lead? Why aren't they doing those things? It's because when we get into an environment like this, when we're in a vacuum, where we, read a book, listen to a TED Talk, attend a session like this, it is so easy to come up with all the right answers to the questions. It's easy to nod along and agree with what's being said, and we know that that's accurate. But then as soon as we get back to our work, get back to our desks, and the pressures of the day-to-day hit us, all of a sudden that stuff that's common sense gets put on the back burner because our hair's on fire and we've got all these things going on. Things are moving so quickly that we have to default back to what we are used to, what we know, and we're not prepared to put into practice the things that we know are common sense because we're not used to them. So we have to remember that leading human beings is messy. And in tech, it's messy at speed. And so on top of the product velocity, the cross-functional teams, the customer feedback loops, constant change, all of these things, you're also dealing with individuals who have their own personalities, they have their own challenges, and understanding what each one of them needs proactively so that we can address those challenges to create the type of environment and the type of team and the type of forward sustainable progress that we want is so important and so difficult. So today is really about taking the things that you probably already know and preparing you for what you may face or what you do already face and how to approach those situations and those challenges in a different way, so that you're ready for them. You can see them coming and you say, oh, I know what that looks like and I know how to respond to it differently now, rather than having to go back into default mode and handling it the way I've always done it and then regretting and wishing I had done it a different way on the back end, right? Now, let me be very clear. What I share with you today is not going to eliminate your leadership challenges. But what it can do is transform you into the kind of leader who can better handle those challenges and create environments of productivity and progress and performance and innovation. So I'm going to have a little bit of interaction here. I don't want to talk at you for 30 or 40 minutes, but I do want to hear some of the things that are on your mind. We're going to keep those comments mostly in the chat. But to start out, I want you to drop a single word in the chat that describes the biggest human-focused challenge that you face in your role as a tech leader. What is your biggest challenge from a human perspective that you face in your role as a tech leader? Drop your answers in the chat. And Andy will set your clothes on fire since you don't have any hair. Andy, as they're putting these things, these answers in, anything that's coming to your mind with this introduction?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that we've covered over the previous weeks, things like imposter syndrome. Do I have the confidence to challenge my leadership? These are themes that we've experienced before, David, and I think they still go on because they show up in various guises, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely right. Imposter syndrome is such a big one. And just quickly on that, I heard a perspective on that a few years ago that I love and I have hung on to it. Imposter syndrome if you think of what it actually is, it is a good thing because it means that you are doing something new, something you have never done before.
Mm.
That means progress, that means innovation, that means forward movement. And if you don't feel imposter syndrome, that's a problem because that means
Complacency,
you're
right?
not growing, right? You're not making that step forward.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for those that input in there. I know Steve's keeping track of this stuff and he's looking for themes and things that he can bring in toward the end. But there are a lot of things that stand in the way of us becoming the leader that we want to become. Let me give you just a quick refresher on the framework that we're going to be focusing on today. This is what I've spoken about before in my sessions with the Curious Mindset. And I'm not going to dive into a lot of depth, but I do want to give those of you who are new to it some context so you understand where we're going. There are 3 main leadership traits that I focus on that seem to encapsulate through some research and through some evidence that I have over the years that I've been doing this, that the things that make the greatest leaders, the human attributes and traits that make leaders the greatest leaders we've ever followed, all of those things seem to fall underneath 3 major umbrella categories or leadership traits, which are honesty, humility, and humanity. Now, I define those perhaps a little bit differently than what you'll see in the dictionary, and we'll get into the definitions as we dive into each one. But rather than focusing on what these are, again, I want to get into the practicalities and help you to be prepared to address these things as you go through the day-to-day pressures that you have. So with each of these 3 traits, we're going to focus on 3 things. First, well, I'll describe what it means. I'll give you the definition, right? Obviously. But then the 3 things we're going to focus on are what makes this hard to do in the real world? Secondly, what are some common leadership gaps that we see based on these 3 traits that keep us from becoming the leaders we want to become? And 3, practical tools and behaviors that can help you naturally close those gaps. Now, let me give you a couple of things as a caveat before we dive into these. For sake of time, I have to focus on 3, maybe 4 in each of these categories. There are so many more. And this is not what I share with you are ideas, they're principles, they're things to get your mind rolling and going as to what that looks like in your organization, on your team, in your individual leadership. So these are more things that can spark your thinking and your awareness to become more conscious of what are some of the gaps that I see? What have I been missing? Or what am I looking past? Or what do I not even notice is a gap in my leadership or on our team? So these are more to get your mind going, and I hope that they will serve as a sort of a nudge to help you expand your thinking on what else is there that I haven't seen in the past, or what else can I do as a leader to close these gaps. Okay, so let me just set that up with that. So let's dive into honesty and what that means. In the context of leadership, to me, honesty goes beyond telling the truth, being transparent, as important as those things are. In a leadership context, honesty really means aligning your behavior with your words and your values. So practice what you preach, do what you say. If you are constantly touting the company's values, behave that way. If you come across very clear on what you stand for individually, behave that way. And importantly, when you veer off course, because you will, we all do, we're all humans and we make mistakes. So the second part of honesty is when we veer off course, we're willing to acknowledge that and do the hard work to bring ourselves back into alignment by closing the gap, fixing the problem, admitting the mistake that we've made, okay? So that's the definition that we're working from on honesty. So let's talk about, for honesty, what makes it hard in the real world? First of all is the pressure to perform. Ultimately, your job is to produce results. So whether that's delivering MVPs, sprints, investor updates, enterprise rollouts, whatever it is, what makes it hard is when timelines are tight, quality, ethics, values can quietly take a back seat because we've got that pressure from a boss or from shareholders or from somebody, sometimes even from ourselves, to produce those results. And so that is one huge thing that makes it difficult to behave in line with values all the time, because when pressure hits, it's really easy for those things to take a back seat. Two is the illusion of small compromises. I don't know any great leaders that wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I think today I'm going to violate all my values, right? Andy, you've probably never done that. I don't think I've ever done that. But as great as our intentions may be, most of us will make those small compromises to avoid discomfort or inconvenience, to make it look like we don't know what we're talking about, or to meet a deadline, or whatever it is, right? And so we overpromise on demos, or we ship features that aren't fully developed yet or fully tested yet. We downplay risks to leadership or to customers, right? Because we want to still look good. We want to make sure that we're keeping people happy. And so we'll cut these little corners. They're not blatant departures from our values, but they're those little things that over time people notice. That's one thing you have to remember is, as a leader, you know this already. People watch everything that you do. They listen to everything that you say. And as a friend, as Stephen Shedletsky, who was on just a few weeks ago, said, and he may have mentioned that there too, in leadership, a whisper is a shout. Every little thing you do amplifies, and especially when it's done consistently over time, that is one thing that can really erode trust if you're not careful. Three is the pace of leadership. In an agile environment, decisions move faster than most teams can process. And so that can create potential, misalignment where we're doing something so quickly, but we didn't communicate it over here. And so it's not that we're intentionally trying to misalign, but it naturally happens when things are moving so fast and communication perhaps isn't as tight as it could be. Okay. So again, these are simple ideas to think about. Quickly drop in the chat some of the ways that you have seen honesty slip in the past in your experience. So where behavior has veered away from values or beliefs. Just jot down the first thing that comes to mind. Doesn't have to be anything major. It's the small things, again, that usually get us over time. And Andy, feel free to hop in if there's anything that you're seeing, again, from the perspective of this group. You know the context so much better than I do, but what are some of the things that are rolling around in your mind?
Yeah, perhaps not so much from the group, but certainly from my own experience of leadership, David, is when the leader is stressed, you often notice that they disconnect from people. So they'll walk past people and not say good morning, not say hello, because they're so
Yeah.
focused on, getting to the office and tackling whatever the issue is that's burning in their mind at the moment. And they
Yep.
drop that kind of connection piece, and people then feel, not valued and not important and not visible.
Yeah, you're
They
absolutely
walk straight
right.
past them without even seeing them.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because let's look at some of the common everyday gaps. It's people first until there's pressure,
Yeah.
until the release window slips, until something happens, right? Even, big things like training or wellness or team connection, all those things get shelved to meet a ship date. But it's even the little things of
Sure.
the going, and this, I talked about this, and I did a speaking engagement in Washington, D.C. yesterday, yesterday? Yes, 2 days ago. The days are blending together. But and one of the things I shared with them was, when you ask somebody, how are you? Wait for the answer. It's a simple little thing like that, right? These are the little things that sometimes we just let go
Yeah.
because we don't have time. Time is such a huge issue. We're going to actually talk about that coming up here in a minute. So let's talk about some of the common leadership gaps here again. And these are just an idea, right? So people first, until the release window slips. So we let go of training and wellness, or other things, product development, or I'm sorry, personal development, when it becomes inconvenient. Accountability for some, excuses for others. So if a top performer or a senior leader or somebody mishandles a situation, we deal with it quietly over here. But when it's a junior person, they get the full process and they get in trouble, right? Focus on values decreases as pressure increases. So we take shortcuts on compliance requirements to meet a launch deadline. Something comes up where it's so easy for those values to go quiet when the pressure goes up, right? Just a quick story on that. I was working at an early in my career at a sales organization. We sold satellite TV, could not have cared less about the product we were selling. But the company was so vision oriented and mission focused, it just drew me right in. And it was a new company. And so everybody we were hiring, we made sure that they were great fits for the culture. They understood and they bought into the vision and all this stuff. And then the selling part came and they could not sell. And so the revenue was not coming in, money was going out faster than it was coming in. We were, things were not looking good. And so immediately at that point, it swung to the other end of the pendulum. They got rid of all the salespeople who were driven by the mission and they brought in anybody who could sell anything. It didn't matter what it took. They made the sales. And yeah, it brought the money up, but
compromise their integrity.
Yeah, that integrity was just out the window. And that's the point at which I started hating that job because it didn't feel right anymore, right? But this happens so often in big ways and small ways too, right? Okay, let's take a look at some of the practical tools and behaviors that can help you become a more honest leader. Now, these tools and behaviors are not designed to be a match for match of this behavior is going to fix this particular gap, right? This is probably, if you take nothing else away from this session, I hope that you'll take this. Fixing those gaps or filling those gaps is not about checking off a box. It is not about putting a process into place or putting a Band-Aid on it so that you don't have to deal with it. These are meant as a way for you to transform your leadership character so that you become a more honest leader. You become a more humble leader. You become a more human leader, that when you show up to work, to your job, you naturally close those gaps because of the environment that you create, because of who you are, not because of what you do. Does that make sense? And these are sustainable things that come naturally. When you think about the greatest leaders you have ever followed, they didn't just put processes into place to fix the issues. They showed up and they were the type of leader that naturally filled those gaps because of how they showed up and how they occurred to people and how they operated, how they led. This is about your leadership character, not checking off a box. Okay. So let's take a look at a couple of these things. The end of the day gut check, right? It's a simple little thing. And I try to make these as frictionless as possible. So it's not one other thing added onto your already overflowing plate, right? But the end of day gut check is a simple 1 or 2 minutes where you reflect, whether it be your drive home or after when you've logged off for the day. Think about one thing that you did well that was in line with your values and beliefs, and one thing that you can do better tomorrow, right? And that's it. So just that awareness and that review of the day every day is so important. 2 is call it out and correct it. So when a misalignment happens, and again, it will all the time, own it publicly and adjust. So for example, if you might say something like, we talk so much about supporting work-life balance, but we've been glorifying late nights. Here's how we're going to fix it, right? So call it out publicly and actually take the action to correct it, starting with your own behavior, which can be the toughest thing, because holding ourselves to the same standards that we expect of others can be tough, right? 3rd, ask for a truth check. So in one-on-ones or just in general, create an environment where employees feel comfortable pointing out inconsistencies without fear. So, you could ask a simple question like, where do we say one thing but actually do another? And that'll help reveal some blind spots. Now, the important thing is simply asking the question does not guarantee that you were going to get any answers. It is so dependent on the culture and the environment that you have created, right? So I want to give you a couple of simple tips or ideas to help this idea of a truth check actually work. Call out something yourself first that you notice an inconsistency in. And when they see that you recognize one yourself, and then you ask them to add to that, is there anything else that you've noticed? I know we're doing this. What else have you noticed? That is so much more inviting to them than just out of the blue asking them what's wrong, right? Because nobody's going to want to tell their boss what's wrong with the culture. So that's one idea. Call something out first. 2nd is when you do get somebody that shares something that they're concerned about, first of all, reward that in some way and show that you're taking action to address the issue that they bring up. It doesn't have to be fixed the next day, but if they see that you're aware of it and making progress toward resolving that, that's going to encourage other people to speak up as well. Okay. All right. So let's, for the sake of time, we're going to skip having you put something in the chat. I want to get through all this stuff because there's some good things here. Let's move on to humility. The way I define humility in terms of leadership is to put others before self and acknowledge weakness and strength without ego. It's so easy to talk about humility in terms of admitting mistakes or fallibility or having a growth mindset or I screwed up, I need to fix something, and kind of on that end of, I don't want to call it the bad end because it's so important, but kind of on that losing end of humility. What we don't talk about very often or often enough, in my opinion, is admitting our strengths, acknowledging what we're good at. You all have incredible, excuse me, experience, knowledge, education, access to resources, connections, all these things that you've worked so incredibly hard to accumulate in your career. And so often in a leadership position, the temptation is to downplay that because we don't want to come across as arrogant. When we're aware of that, of how badly that comes across, we just don't want to talk about it because we don't want others to feel like we have an inflated ego. But you're actually doing your team more harm than good by doing that. So how do you acknowledge all of those strengths and all those things that you have without letting your ego get in the way? It's something that I call humble confidence. And that means that you look at all of those things that you have, and rather than saying or thinking, hey, look at all this stuff I have, it's all for me, and how do I use it to advance my career and to make myself look better? You say, how do I use all these things to support my team and lift them up and give them the resources that they need so that they can thrive and we as a team can succeed together? Acknowledge what you have, but share it, use it. Think of it as resources that can benefit everybody instead of just you. So that humble confidence, acknowledging strengths is such an important part of humility because that's one of the things that helps drive performance and drive your team forward, right? So what makes humility hard in the real world? The fear of losing authority. Sometimes we feel like, especially in highly specialized environments, that admitting that we don't know something feels very risky. And so we go in with that certainty and we don't want to ask a question or be curious or admit that we don't know something that we should know. We feel like we should know. Mm-hmm. Two is success can reinforce ego. So a high impact product launch or a successful exit can feed this false belief that past success equals future certainty. And so we kind of we rest on our laurels and we think, oh, that's going to reinforce that I'm right. Three is high stakes environments favor confidence. In most industries, I would say, in tech as well, certainty is rewarded. But too much confidence in a decision without, listening to feedback or new information or, any other input that might come in can end up stifling dissent. It can limit input. It can kill innovation when we are so confident in something that we have made that we are not willing to change our opinion or our idea on something. Okay, some common leadership gaps in humility. More talking than listening, making sure that your opinion or your perspective gets across in a meeting. The I already know the answer syndrome. So you might skip over junior input or UX insights, assuming that you have a broader picture. You know the context, you know what's going on. These little people don't have any idea what's happening, right? We talked about this a minute ago, downplaying your talents and accomplishments, diminishing who you are, what you have, what you've done. Now, we'll talk about how to do that properly in the next section on behaviors and tools. But that is one way of using humility in the wrong way, is to downplay yourself. And fourth, I added a fourth one on here because this is such a big one, resisting feedback. Maybe leaders nod along in retros, but they don't actually change the behavior or roadmap decisions based on those feedback loops. Let's take a look at some practical tools and behaviors. Ask questions instead of making statements. you can use this all over the place. So if somebody comes to you with a challenge or a problem and you've dealt with it 1,000 times, you've seen it before, it's so tempting just to give them the answer and say, go do this, because it saves time, right? And you come across knowing what you're talking about. Well, what if instead of that, you got curious and asked a few more questions, asked what is really going on, got a little bit more context for the challenge because maybe there's a nuance to it that you're not prepared for, or something that you haven't seen before, or something for them personally that's challenging that wouldn't be challenging for you. So ask questions instead of making statements. That's one way to really practice and become, again, we're trying to become a more humble leader, one who naturally will close the gaps that come because of the way that we operate and the way we behave. Second is go last. Whether it be speaking last in a meeting and holding back your opinion or your idea until everybody's had the chance to share theirs, or you're the last one to grab a muffin out of the box when somebody brings treats to work, right? Just put other people before yourself. Get used to doing anything that helps you remember that you are not the most important person in the room, not the smartest person in the room, but that other people around you have value. So go last. Third is share the spotlight. When you are recognized for something, or when you have the chance to talk about a success or progress, include everybody who contributed to it. Yes, say thank you. Say, when we worked really hard on that, and I want to point out this person and this person, or our team came together. Always share that spotlight. Put other people up on a pedestal, lift them up. And that allows you to accept that praise and that recognition, but doing it in a way that shares the praise instead of keeping that and feeding that ego. We're moving quickly. Anything we need to do on this, Andy, before we move on? Am I missing anything?
No, I think you're nailing everything, David.
Okay. Let's move on to humanity. Bring it home with this, and then we've got one other thing to tie everything together. Um, Humanity, the way that I define that in the context of leadership is to show a genuine care and concern for the human experience of other people. How do we help them know that they are seen, heard, valued, that their opinion matters, that we want to get to know them beyond just their job title or their employee number, but that they're an individual human being that we genuinely care about? That can be tough for several reasons in any organization, but in tech specifically, we run into a few things. So this agile sort of sprint focused thinking, and we talked about this before, Andy, right? Just deprioritize that human experience unless it's intentionally baked in. It does take more time up front to be curious, to understand people's perspectives, to get to know them personally. But interestingly, it actually creates more efficiency on the back end. The biggest thing that I hear from leaders, is it the biggest? It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest. When I talk about doing some of these things, I don't have time. I
Yeah.
don't have time to spend more time with my people, to do more one-on-ones, to check in with them and get to know who they are. I just don't have time for it. We got a business to run. To that I say, we make time for the things that are important to us. I don't care what it is. You will make time. If something is a priority for you, you will make the time for it. And so until this becomes a priority, until your people, until your leadership, human-focused leadership becomes a priority for you, yeah, you're not going to have time for it. You got to make the time. It's a
Sure.
great story, and I'll share this just to show you in a real world sense how this works. I'm doing a big consulting project over 2.5 years with a big grocery store chain, and their head of HR went through this program, and she decided to make some changes. When it came, we were working on a particular module about really making sure that the needs of the people that we lead are met. She decided, get this, folks, this is not normal. She decided to schedule an extra 4 hours of meetings every week to sit down with every single person on her team and ask them, what do you need? What are your goals? What do you want here? What is your career trajectory? What she wanted to get to know what they wanted out of their career, out of their life. She lost her nights, she lost her weekends, but she committed to these extra hours of meetings, one-on-ones with her team for about 2 months. She did this. And obviously that took a lot more of her time.
Sure.
What she ended up finding was that after a couple months, she started getting her time back because people weren't coming to her with every little thing that they needed. They had everything that they needed on the front end. She started having to spend less and less and less time on this stuff because she ensured that they had the resources, the tools, the knowledge, the training to do their jobs more independently because they had everything that they needed from her. So yes, it is a sacrifice on the front end. All of this stuff, all of this human stuff is not convenient. Like service is not convenient. That's the very definition of service, is putting yourself out for somebody else. Leadership is a service. We talk about servant leadership, right? So I think it's a great example of, yes, doing the hard work on the front end to get the reward on the back end, right?
I guess, David, we could challenge the word sacrifice and say it's actually an investment, because the
Totally.
return on that investment is more efficiency, right?
Yeah, that's a great, great point. And I think, again, just those simple words with a mindset shift of sacrifice often is synonymous with suffering, right? It's like, oh, I got to muscle through this to get what I want out of it. But when you think of it as an investment, it changes that approach. I love that.
And the value that the staff member feels then gives you that thing that we all seek for as leaders, which is discretionary effort, right? They go over and above
Totally.
because of how you made them feel.
Yeah, and you cannot buy that. You cannot train that. It has to naturally come from from the people. It's fantastic. Okay, so efficiency over empathy, right? That is a huge thing that makes it hard. Two, emotions are inconvenient. We don't like dealing with other people's emotions, especially in and I hate to generalize, but still a largely male-driven environment where it's data and numbers and code. Like where do emotions fit into that?
Mm.
So these emotions could be dismissed as soft or non-essential, or leave your emotions at the door, all that kind of stuff. And that makes it really hard in this type of environment.
Mm.
Three is policies are designed for the masses, not for individuals. So especially when things are moving at speed, it's so easy just to rely on a policy and treat everybody the same because it's just easier. It's just more efficient that way. But we've got it, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on again. We've got to be sensitive to the individuals on our teams. Okay, with those difficulties, excuse me, some of the common gaps in humanity. Burnout signals are ignored until it's too late. We push, 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 push. Productivity is high until suddenly it isn't. And nobody bothered to ask, hey, how are you? Right? And so that's a big gap that comes up. Treating everyone the same, not only even in a physical environment, but in a hybrid or remote setup, people need different things. Either, logistically they need different things, or emotionally they need different things with isolation or burnout or loneliness and all of these things that come with being on your own, especially if somebody is living on their own. Accountability without empathy. Basically, that means using fear to drive performance.
Mm-hmm.
But just as importantly, empathy without accountability can be damaging as well, because you're being nice to avoid hard conversations, but that is actually hampering the development of that person because they're not getting the feedback that they need in order to grow and do better.
Yeah.
Let's talk about practical tools and behaviors. Empathy, accountability, balance. So when you're addressing an issue, acknowledge the person's struggle, what they're going through, their individual challenge, and reinforce expectations at the same time. So that might sound like, listen, I know this has been a tough time for you. I appreciate your effort. We still have to get this project done on schedule. How can I support you to get there, right? It's having a genuine care about what they need and balancing that with the needs of the project. Do they need to, do we need to bring somebody in for support? What do they need individually? So as a result, the project will get done. Not, we got to get the project done, fix whatever you got to fix to get there, right? Habitualize things like the check-in, right? This is a great little practice that before every meeting or at the beginning of every meeting, everybody takes 30 seconds to just check in. You don't talk about work. You don't talk about the project. You don't talk about what you have on your plate right now, work-wise. It is what is happening for you individually. And 3, remove distractions. How many buzzes and dings and alerts and stuff are we getting when people are sitting in front of us, or worse, when we're on a screen with them, and it's so easy and tempting to just do other things while we're talking to them. Turn off your alerts, put your phone in the desk, close the laptop, whatever it is that you can do to be completely zeroed in on who they are, what they need, so that they feel genuinely that you are genuinely locked in with them, right? Okay, let's wrap this up. These are all great, right? And I arranged them in a Venn diagram for a very specific reason, which is because when we consistently practice honesty, humility, and humanity, we get a natural result in the middle. They overlap and bring us something incredible. Now, you got to remember that as tech leaders, you are not just responsible for shipping products, you are responsible for the human beings that are shipping the products, right? And when you practice all of these things, you get a wonderful combination. And Andy mentioned this at the very beginning. I call it the magic middle. And it is a combination of connection, trust, and psychological safety. In a fast-paced, constantly evolving environment, where innovation, speed, collaboration are top of mind, these things become performance multipliers. They're not just nice to haves, right? Trust means that people spend less time second guessing their boss's decisions, and they spend more time actually moving forward. Connection fuels collaboration across different functions, especially in hybrid or remote settings. Psychological safety empowers engineers, designers, team leads to speak up or flag risks or share ideas before the bugs or the burnout or the blind spots happen. And there's interesting data to back this up. Google's Project Aristotle found that psychological safety was the #1 predictor of high-performing teams. When people feel safe to be honest, to take risks, to admit mistakes, teams move faster, they solve problems better, and they create more reliable, innovative products, which is the end result, the end goal, right? So if you want better results, start with better relationships. And if you want better relationships, start with honesty, humility, and humanity. So I'll stop there and we'll move to some questions. Thanks, everybody.
David, what a fantastic summary. I absolutely loved that. And I absolutely love your presentation. The flow is so natural, and it was a pleasure to observe. Thank you so much.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I've been watching the chat, and the questions are firing through. So I'm going to go straight to Steve now. If everybody's on gallery mode, that's great. But Steve, please take us through the questions, buddy.